Hi, thanks for joining me today for a Philly Market Minute live update. I have to ask your forgiveness. I'm going to go over a minute today, a little bit longer, because I've got a lot of important things to talk about the market. But I do like to keep my commitment to keep things short. So what I wanted to do is highlight a few things nationally as well as locally and share with you some insights that I learned yesterday from one of the top developers in Philadelphia that will benefit you, whether you're buying or selling or flipping or building, you're an investor. So I apologize. My goal was to have it online behind me, but I had some technical difficulties. So be sure to hit me up below. I will publish my little presentation with some of the facts and stats that we're talking through after I'm done. And I appreciate your patience. Just be sure to let me know you want it. And I'll put a link there below as well as some other links. So what is the news? Hopefully you've reviewed the Q2 report that I published. It's interactive that tells you what was happening in the Philadelphia and also the mainline market for Q2. But what I want to share with you for a minute is about the trends that we're seeing nationally. Some of it is not news. Inventory remains tight, affordability remains strong, and the ability for buyers to buy, their credit worthiness is very strong nationally as well. So we have a good pool of buyers out there who are qualified and need to buy something, want to buy something, and aren't just finding the right home. So we'll touch base on what that means in a minute. Also, just to let you know, nationally, for starter homes, which Philadelphia fits well in the starter home market, the prices year over year are up almost 10%. But the inventory year over year is down over 14%. So what does that mean? That means, we have a shortage, and that's why sometimes you're running into competing offers in different situations. Hi William. Hi Joey. I don't know if you want to come online or not, but thanks for joining us. So feel free to put your comments on here as well, and questions. If I miss your question, because I'm kind of multitasking here, I'll get to it later in the comments, okay? Here, I'll go ahead and, hi Bob, bring you online if you want. You don't have to, but if you want. Okay, so let me give you a quote from CoreLogic. If you're not familiar with CoreLogic, they're one of the top economic forecasters and data analyzers in the country. They look at national stats. And their quote, I'm sorry, I meant to share it with you. Their quote is, "The lean supply of homes for sale is leading to higher sales prices and fewer days on market. And the supply shortage is more acute for entry-level homes." So that, we can talk about what that means for Philadelphia. Philadelphia has a lot of affordable homes, so that hits us here in the market. So given some of the snapshot nationally, here's my take for you on what does that mean when demand is up and supply is down. Well, if you're thinking about selling or trying to sell, it still is a good time. It makes sense if it makes sense for you. And that's when we meet, we'll go over, does it really make sense to sell? If your sale didn't work, because a lot of times I talk to people who were working with another realtor or trying to do for sale by owner and it didn't work. We'll talk about that too, because it might be still the best strategy, is just somehow didn't connect with the market correctly. For buyers, I gotta say, don't let the short inventory scare you. If it's the right time to buy, real estate is a long-term investment. So we'll talk about some strategies here I'll touch on of ways that you can be prepared to beat people out negotiating, where I work with my buyers to find off-market inventory, and also some alternative strategies. We'll talk about my DIY event in September. You can learn how to house hack and create some instant equity and some things like that. So, excuse me one second. But what about investors? And we talked about buyers, sellers. What is the market telling investors? Oh, hi, Norm. Nice to see you. Okay, so I've been meeting a lot with new investors, people who want to get into flipping homes. And it's fun to watch on TV, flip it or fix it. The experts make it look super easy. Philadelphia market has been great for flipping. We're going to talk about economic forecasts in a moment. But if you're new at flipping, I'm concerned, because when the market shifts, and this is from someone who went through the worst of the credit crisis, I started in 2004. So I've seen the best and worst of times in real estate, so to speak. And what happens when there's a market shift, none of us know when one will happen, or hindsight's 2020, right? It may not be that bad in Philadelphia. Philadelphia is pretty stable through the mortgage crisis. But if it does shift, and it shifts neighborhood by neighborhood, who gets caught the worst are builders and flippers, because they're basing the economic projection on past sales. And if the market shifts even a little bit, it can cut the profit out immediately. So if you're just starting with trying to flip, we'll talk about this. There's a couple things that we need to talk about. One is acquisition cost has gotten higher. Auction properties are going way over market value sometimes if you're trying to buy at the auction. And people, certainly would be advising you against using hard money if you're a first-time flipper, because it's a short-term situation. If the market shifts, you're stuck. It can still make sense, but it's just, I'm going to be conservative with you in how to prepare to make a profit, and also make sure you're not hit by surprise if there's a shift in the market unexpectedly. But the other part of investing, and this is something that came up yesterday in our in-house presentation, got to put a shout out to KW Philly here. We have some of the best meetings and speakers that come in. We had one of the top developers in the city come in and give us his insights on the market, and as well as how he became successful. So we'll talk about that in a second, and the things that I learned from him yesterday. What I'm going to get at next is what you don't want to hear, and this is slow down. Everybody I talked to who's national news, Leo yesterday talked about a slowdown is in the market is inevitable. Real estate goes through cycles. We're overdue on a 7-8 year cycle. Normally there's a little downshift in the market. It doesn't have to be completely, oh hi Connie, nice to see you. It doesn't have to be completely scary. There are ways, and this is why when we meet, I want to go over strategies to analyze the market nationally, locally, and specifically to your goals and to your property, so that we can weather through if a shift happens in the middle of our strategy, as well as planning for short-term and long-term goals. So people are talking about a shift, and they talked about one in 2012 and 2016, and nothing happened. So, there's going to be some kind of shift of what it looks like exactly. We don't know. Here's a quote from the Wall Street Journal. Bear with me while I read it. The economic expansion that began in mid-2009 and already ranks as the second longest in American history most likely will end in 2020 as the Federal Reserve raises interest rates to cool off an overheating economy. I've heard that several places. Recession, that's my comment, not the quote, sorry. Recessions are notoriously difficult to predict. Forecasters saw the chances of a recession rise back in 2011 and in 2016. Both turned out to be false alarms. Okay, but we know just from common sense, historically, real estate goes through these cycles. So it's a lot, Leo said yesterday, it's a get rich slowly game, real estate. So we want to make sure that you don't have short-term plans. That's where I'm concerned about flipping, because if your goals for creating wealth, like if you're putting all your eggs in one basket for a short-term flip, you could really get hurt. So let's look a little bit more in terms of what's going on in Philly, right? That's what we really care about. Leo Adamondo was our speaker yesterday, and he and his group do development throughout Philadelphia and some other little glitch. What happens when somebody calls when you're Facebook Live? We could have them join the call, but anyway. So I'll learn. Next time I'll learn to shut the phone off. Anyway, institutional developers report that investors are coming from across the country and even globally and investing in Philadelphia. I found that tremendously interesting that Leo talked about yesterday. He highlighted 4 things that are drawing investors to Philadelphia. One, it's a city with the fastest wage growth on the East Coast and also just major metropolitan areas. Job growth isn't strong, but wage growth is. 2, it's a stable employment base. This is good for renters, right? He's working mostly with rental properties. 3, it's affordable. It's the 4th or 5th ranking city in the entire United States in terms of affordability. And 4th is it's the number 1, what they call meds-eds market in the US. So that's good not only for renting, but also for potential buyers. So we'll talk about how that can work and maximize when we meet and talk about your goals. So here's my 2 cents for buyers. Should I buy now? Here's what I say. If investors around the globe are buying in Philly, then why don't we learn from them? We know Philly better than they do. You know your neighborhood. And yes, the prices may seem high. They're higher than they were 5 years ago, certainly higher than when you were a kid. So it may seem to you like it's too high. However, especially if you're buying investment properties, the rental market looks extremely strong. So getting into the investment game, if you haven't already, it could be a smart time to do that, especially if there's rental income that will help you carry the property, which leads me to the second strategy. Think about house hacking. I'm hosting an event with Mike Gliatone next month where we're going to go through how you can use financing to essentially house hack your purchase. Could be a single family home, but here's where it could work for you on an investment strategy and also weathering any potential downturn. Why not make it, or it could be your second home. It doesn't have to be the first home, but why not make it a duplex or a triplex? And then you have passive income to cover your housing costs. So the property will carry itself. By house hacking and doing renovation, you're more than likely going to have instant equity. And this would be another way to not flip, but maximize the same profit that flippers make without the risk. Like if you live in the property, can weather it through for 3 to 5 years, then once whatever the shift happens, it's when the market's hot in your favor, then move on to your next property. So it's not about just don't do, it's about how to buy strategically. Okay, so now the question for sellers: should I sell now? Classically, any Warren Buffett type economic advice, when you have a product that everybody wants and there's not much there, that's a good time to sell. So of course it has to be particular to your goals, but it's worth a conversation. We can look at, of course, it's not just about selling your property, it's about what are your goals and how does selling fit into your long-term, short-term and long-term goals. Renting out your property, a lot of times I talk to sellers who tried to sell and it didn't work and they've rented out their property. That could very well be a great strategy for you, and we can certainly help you with that. However, what I'd hate to see you do is rent it out as your plan B. It should be the positive strategy for you. If you're deciding to rent it out because your sale was not successful, we really need to talk right away, because it's very possible that your property just wasn't connecting with the right market in the right way to accomplish your goals. And just a little tidbit, food for thought. One of the advantages that you can use is the 1031 tax exchange if you have an investment property. If you haven't heard about that, I'm not going to go into details, but it's a way to move your profit and your debt into other properties without taking the hit on capital gains. You move it forward. So I know I've gone way over my short commitment to you. I apologize. I just want to highlight a few other sources of data, and I'll put this in comments before. Please feel free to hit me up for this. I can give you detailed market data for your neighborhood, including economic trends for the entire zip code. Happy to do a comparable analysis for a property you're thinking about buying, you have your eye on, or your property. If you're considering what that means, what it would be worth in the market, please ask me. Happy to do a rental analysis on a property. Also, we have a proprietary cap rate analysis. We'll do a worksheet to see what an investment property really looks like in terms of gain for you. And if you're buying, rent versus buy, that's an important question. Well, there are a lot of things to plug into that. We've got a worksheet that I'll work with, if you give me the numbers of what you're considering, and we'll look at what that looks like for you short-term and long-term. There's another thing I can do for you is give you up-to-the-date current buyer activity in your zip code and your price point, or your potential price point, because we're talking historic data. The Q2 report, I love it, it's fun. This data is great, but what's going on with the feet on the street right now in the last 30 days? How many buyers are actually looking? Say your home is worth $350,000 in Graduate Hospital. I'll give you detailed analysis of how many showings are happening for comparable properties on the market, so we can see where the buyer trends are right now. So as you can tell, I love to share information. I'm going to post some links below. Please be sure to like this page if you haven't already. I'm also on IGTV. And my Instagram account is simple. It's Susanna Kunkel. My YouTube channel is sellingphilly.tv. And I look forward to continuing our conversation. Have a great weekend.